Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses for being here today to talk about this important subject that discussion has been going on for some time. Certainly, our Constitution guarantees the right to own property and the right to protect it, and we're the only nation that actually ensures that in our Constitution. And so we're talking about, this social media and those kind of things that are using people's personal property to enrich themselves. And so, Ms. Tamarella, in your testimony, you argue that sunsetting Section 230 risks leaving internet platforms, especially those run by startups, open to substantial litigation, which ultimately risks leaving internet users without places to gather online. I hear your argument that startups need to focus on innovation rather than litigation, but on the other hand, sympathetic to arguments that Section 230 enables large internet platforms to amplify and monetize harmful content. Should this committee consider sunsetting Section 230 for large internet platforms only?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. It's not my job or interest to defend large tech companies, and so I won't speak for kind of what a sunset would mean for them from an engine perspective. We certainly have startups that use large platforms to reach consumers and users, and their activity could be impacted. But I will just note the personal story I told in my oral testimony was about how I was able to rely on things like Facebook groups, private Facebook groups, to access needed support and information. And so I think from a user perspective, sunsetting Section 230 only for large companies runs the same risk as sunsetting 230 for everyone, and that will harm user expression.
I'm interested to see the limits of Section 230 as it applies to internet innovations. For example, we're seeing disruptors and innovators emerge in the search space, such as Perplexity, which uses generative AI technologies to produce consolidated responses to search queries. Ms. Tamarella, should AI-generated responses to users' search queries be protected?
That is an emerging field not only of technology but also of legal interpretation, and so I'm hesitant to take a position. I definitely think there's compelling arguments that it shouldn't be covered by 230. I will say generative AI tends to be talked about in the context of ChatGPT and Midjourney and things that kind of create things that replace human creations, but we have a lot of startups using generative AI for like chatbot responses for hotel guests that tell you when the pool is open. And so I worry that any conversations about generative AI focused on some of the edge cases would impact the whole ecosystem.
Let me ask you about this. What about if sources for components to the AI-generated response are provided so that it's clear the response comprises third-party content? Should Section 230 shield these outputs?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
What about if sources for components of the AI-generated response are provided so that it's clear the response comprises third-party content? In other words, it's clear. Should Section 230 shield these outputs?
I imagine policymakers want to incentivize transparency around AI, and so certainly would want to incentivize platforms acknowledging and disclosing when when something is AI created.
Ms. Goldberg, in your written testimony, you noted that the financial pressures typically imposed by consumers' safety standards are almost non-existent. Consequently, online companies have no incentive to prevent injuries, intervene when harm is underway, invest in infrastructures and staffing to moderate harm, or innovate for safer products. Some have proposed that sunsetting Section 230 would incentivize internet firms to prioritize amplifying professional content like news content because they would have greater confidence and it is legally sound. News content must go through an editorial process prior to publication, after all. Could this sunset be beneficial for consumers since outputs might be safer?
The sunset would definitely prioritize consumer safety. I think that as I listened to Ms. Tamarella talk about the pressures that startups have and the burden that they face if they have to spend a lot of money on content moderation, I have no sympathy for that. If you are in the business of creating a product or a service that is supposed to attract lots and lots of people, and you don't have an infrastructure that can responsibly prevent those people from
Yeah,
being
you need
injured,
guardrails.
then that's where the innovation needs to be.
Right, exactly. Well, I am out of time. I have additional questions which I will submit to you for the record. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.